Years ago, I shot 10 bags of heroin every day. Heroin is a beast, and that beast has infiltrated every town and city in America. In 2016, 64,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose of opioids. I hope that the stories we bring you on this show save lives in 2018. I'm Richie Farrell. I'm a heroin addict. Okay, well, thank you for signing in tonight and watching us. We have a fantastic show ahead of us. First thing I want to say, this show is called I Am a Heroin Addict. It's something that is very dear to me as a recovering addict for 30 plus years. Seeing all the death and the amount of people ranging between 171 to 191 in different statistics per day. It's pretty crazy. And I just felt with a 12-year-old son that it was something I needed to jump in. I had written a memoir called I Am a Heroin Addict that was detailing my 7 days in a court-ordered detox many, many years ago. You know, now I like to call myself an old white guy with a lot of years of recovery, a lot of years of experience. I've been really lucky to have some great success. So my goal is to be able to, through phones and through the internet, is to be able to stream this show to struggling addicts all over the country, not just where we're shooting it here, the local TV studio, but to go out all over, so that somehow that we'll be able to get to people and help them. So what we're doing tonight is we have an in-studio guest, Jasmine. And how are you tonight, Jasmine?
Well, how are you?
Very well. And then in a few minutes, we're going to bring in a woman from Boston, from Recovery Matters. She's kind of a pain in the butt. We'll let her go. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But let's talk a little bit. You're local, so why don't you tell me a little bit about your story and you know, how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story doesn't start in Asheville, New Hampshire, but it starts in New Hampshire. I had my first drink at the age of 9, and that started progressing. I was pretty heavy into drinking by like the age of 12. I wasn't drinking every day, but I was drinking to escape, and I had no idea what was wrong with me. I just knew that like I didn't want to be anywhere I was, and I was just always miserable. By the time that I had high school, I had found like hard drugs. And I didn't discover heroin until my mid-20s, but as soon as I found heroin, it was like all over from
How did you find it?
How did I find heroin? It started with prescription painkillers. Yeah, it started with prescription painkillers, and I had always, you know, had labeled myself and had that thought process like, oh, I'm better than those heroin addicts. I'm better than those heroin addicts. I do Percocet, and I did it. I had started doing Percocet at the time because my boyfriend was doing it, you know, is what I had told myself. Why I started doing it, and so then started like in and out of treatment centers, and I still.
So Jasmine, just to step back from it.
Yeah.
Were you prescribed by a doctor, or because your boyfriend?
Yeah, no, I had dated a man that sold them.
That sold them.
Yes.
So he said these little suckers are good, man.
And they were. They provided all the relief that I needed.
Oh, they were like when I think back, I tell people now, how did you? It's a long time ago. I went from a football field to Choate Hospital in Woburn, and I walked out of there with these perk, and I goes, whoa, these things take away everything. Not only the pain, but it takes away all my emotional pain.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened. You know, where did you know, how'd you get to heroin?
How to get to heroin? Well, so you know, Percocets were becoming harder and harder to find, and OxyContin had been taken off the market, and as my addiction progressed, like money was harder to come by, and you had to start doing more scandalous things to get the money and more risk. And so eventually heroin just became like the easier option.
I didn't make the jump.
How did I make the
Yeah.
jump? I just did it.
Just did it.
Yeah, I just did it. There, it was just like, you know, once I had like done heroin, I was like, all right, like there's the same effect produced here. I'm okay. This is great. I love it. I'm totally like gone from reality. And from that moment, it was like always heroin. I wasn't even looking for Percocets anymore.
And where did heroin bring you?
Heroin brought me, and I've done a lot of jail time, in and out of jail, homeless, living in the streets, not having a roof over my head. Family wants nothing to do with me. Yeah.
So how did you get here tonight?
Yeah, how did I get
Yeah.
here? Well, it wasn't easy. I don't even know why this is my story, other than that there's obviously some kind of power working in my life, because I've been in and out of treatment centers. I've been mandated to treatment centers by the courts. I've gone to treatment centers to please my family. I've been to different treatment centers in different states. I've done a lot of jail time. I've done a lot of detoxes, and I've been in and out. And my last time, and I've been in and out of like 12-step fellowships for a long time too. And then my last time that I had relapsed, and I went on a vicious run with heroin. It wasn't that at this time in my life I realized that like that heroin is not a solution for me, and I was just like looking to kill myself. And I can't really tell you why, because I was in a 12-step fellowship program at that time. My sponsor worked in treatment, and she kept trying to get me to go. And then just one day, a man that I didn't really know had offered me a scholarship at, and I went.
Who was that?
His name's Eric Spofford.
Oh, I know him.
Yes.
He never answers my email. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
He's a great guy.
No,
and
he's a great guy. I was
yeah,
just joking.
and he gave me, you know, he scholarshiped me to detox, and he scholarshiped me to treatment. And I had nowhere to go. I had burnt every bridge I had, and I just knew that I didn't want to go back. And before I had gotten to that, I don't even know. The day I got into that detox, I was in a meth-induced psychosis. I was dope sick from heroin, and I was a terrible mess. And I don't even know why I went, because I didn't. Many people had tried to get me to treatment.
Yeah.
But from that moment forward, there was just some kind of shift inside of me, and I was like, I'm going to like invest my all into this. And I don't know why I've been giving this opportunity, but like I am here for recovery.
You got it. So how much time you got?
15 months.
Ah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's bring in our buddy here, Brian Fitzgerald from Recovery Matters. I met this young lady just back in December, and I think she, I forget if it was a Huffington Post article that I wrote or whatever it was, but and since then she's been a pain. No, I'm just kidding. So, how are you, Brian? Good.
Yeah, for sure.
That's for sure. Tell us a couple things. Take us back. Set us up in who you are, you know, and how you get in this game. No. What happened? No, that's for another story. I know. Money happened. That's what it is. Money happened. Right. So tell me about Recovery Matters. And Jasmine, at any time you want to ask a question or say, feel free to cut me off.
Sure.
All right.
I can do that.
So tell us about.
Hey, it came about in 2016. I'm from Boston, and there was a large push to open a safe injection site. The names keep changing now. They call it a safe consumption site. I was philosophically opposed to that, and I had found a few other like-minded people that were in agreement with me. pharmacists, people in recovery, other nurses. And so that was the genesis of where we came from. We had felt that the idea of recovery had been kind of pushed to the background in harm reduction, which I am for. I am for harm reduction, but harm reduction has become the new money-making tool for addiction treatment. And so that's where it came about. So we got together and decided, how can we continue to support and celebrate the fact that people can and do get well. I feel young people in particular aren't seeing recovery because there's too many choices. Here's your clean needles, here's your Suboxone, here's your methadone, whatever.
So tell us for a minute. I think I'm sure Jasmine knows that term, reduction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so explain to the audience in a very clear and concise what that means.
I mean, when I was working in HIV/AIDS, before needles and syringes were available, we, as a renegade bunch, made sure needles and syringes were available to those that were still injecting. So I'm not opposed to harm reduction per se, but harm reduction, in my mind, is supporting that part of the addict, and I am not politically correct, person with substance disorder, supporting that part of the addict that wants to live. And the key word is live, not just exist, not survive, not wait for their next high, but they want to live. They don't want to die, and so I'm for it in that way. So that's where I see harm reduction. I feel harm reduction has become, the new treatment. We're not even trying to get people to recover or become drug-free, alcohol-free.
Right. So Jasmine, how do you feel about harm reduction?
Harm reduction. I actually have lots of experience with such things as like Suboxone and Methadone. And in my experience, those things never worked for me. They just like enabled me to keep doing what I was doing, and I never actually took a look at like where this was coming from and why I was behaving this way and why I felt a need to escape reality and why I was just so uncomfortable. In my experience, they have never worked for me, and in a lot of people that I know, they haven't worked for them.
Yeah, I think that when I think of harm reduction, I look at it as it's a great buzzword,
Right.
It's a great buzzword to harm reduction, and it's great for. So this epidemic, nobody could have prepared for it, right? So all of a sudden, the medical community was hit with this incredible, right? And so it's like, whoa, let's stop this. Let's stop. What do we do? What do we do? Right?
They made the mess. They didn't. They weren't hit with it. They created it.
Well, big pharma did, Purdue. But I'm talking about, and yeah, the medical, because they prescribed, and the pill mills and all that. I get that, but what I see is it's a great buzzword to slow down the deaths, or they thought it was going to slow down the deaths, but it hasn't. Because if you got 64,700 people die in 2016 and 70 plus, they don't have the finals for last year, it's not working, right? So why do you think they're still at it? Well, let's go with Ryan first. Why do you think that they're not talking about, maybe I don't want to say this word too loud, abstinence? I'm sorry I said that. I get attacked when I say that word. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. I mean, and it's easy for me to say, but I truly believe that money is the root of a lot of it. I mean, there's money to be made. The media, the pharmaceutical companies, and the addiction treatment industry is in this for the long haul. And if we continue to keep people addicted or dependent, we're not. It's an end zero-sum game. Nobody gets better, and I am not. I mean, Richie, I believe in time-limited, treatment-focused, medication-assisted treatment. It's medication-assisted. It's like a cast on a broken leg. It gives you time. It might give you time if you're using it correctly to heal from the inside out, and the healing comes from the inside out. It's not going to come from medicines.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think she's pretty spot on. My opinion is pretty much the same. Very money driven, right? Also, in my opinion, in my experience, I know that like I'm just a baby in recovery right now, but there's so much fear driven around the epidemic, and you know, like the families and everyone. So here comes MAT programs, and it's like a sense of ease and comfort for the family. You know, oh, they're okay. They're going to be on Suboxone, and instead of facing like the reality of like no, like you know, they're replacing. They're not taking a look at what's really going on here. And like she had said, like there's a lot of money being driven behind it too. And if you keep addicts sick, we're just going to keep them in the system. We're going to be able to continually make money off them. And then you've got to think about it too, right? Because from the recovery portion, like as a recovered addict, like it's my duty, and I only stay sober by extending my hand. And I go out, and then you get other people who are in harm reduction. And they're going to spread that and talk about that, and that is going to manifest with amongst whoever they are, you know, and so then it's going even further.
Yeah, the thing I want to say, go ahead, Brianna. You were going to say
And I'm
something.
kind of wound up now. I see all of these, these polarizing arguments, like people are saying, AA or NA stigmatizes people on medication-assisted treatment. NA and AA is a program that works independent of the government, independent of any money-making business. They can say whatever they want, and some people actually go to those meetings so they can be around other people who are not using.
Right.
Unfortunately, especially in Massachusetts now, we are not allowed to reject anybody to come into a halfway house based on the medication they're on. So I'm in the halfway house trying to get sober, and my roommate is nodding out on 180 milligrams of methadone. It's really, really, that's why it's hard, I think, for young people in particular to get sober today.
There's a key, well, it brings me, I'm thinking as you guys are talking, our guest 2 weeks ago was this James Matthew, a thug, gangster from Philly. Was on his own at 14. If you have a chance to watch the show, and he said a great thing you'll love. He said, MAT in his own thug language.
Yeah.
MAT, what's missing is the A. We're not assisting these people. He said, I agree with the medical stuff and the treatment, but we're missing the A. And it was just interesting to hear. Now he rides across the country on a bike. He gets sponsors. He brings scholarships with him. Unbelievable this kid is even alive, But he's the same way. And the problem is, the ironic thing, the other thing is when I had lunch with the guy that won't answer my emails, we talked about back in the day how it was for us. It was like the AA and NA. You'd go in and they'd say, get in there and shut up. Sit down, make some coffee, shut up. Listen, and that I'm not saying that works for everybody, but back then, that's what I did. I went in and I sat down and I shut up and I listened, and I was able to get, the spirituality of that group. Not that they were on their knees praying, not that we're going to church, but it was great. However, I also can see that if somebody is strung out and they're overdosed 2 or 3 times, and I think it's a great way to keep them alive for a short period of time. The methadone and spot. I think we got to figure something out. I may be wrong, but we have to figure something out that Suboxone was only meant to be a detox medication.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's how the man.
And it was once a day dosed medication also, back when it started.
It was?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was on a Suboxone program for 2.5 years, and it was with 24 milligrams of Suboxone a day. And on top of that, I had never even stopped using heroin.
Is that a lot? I don't know anything about it. Is that a lot?
Yeah.
24. And methadone, what's the most they had you on methadone?
40. I didn't go very high on
Didn't
methadone.
go 40.
Yeah.
That's lucky.
Yeah, that's a very low dose for methadone. My mom, who's in recovery now and doesn't mind me disclosing that information, was on methadone for like 5 years at very high doses. And when she did finally decide to get sober, it took her such a long time to make it through
Horrible.
detoxes. It was a lot of suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I kick methadone, and I'd rather kick. I say this
Oh,
all the time. I'd rather kick heroin 5 times, 10 times than methadone once.
oh,
Because
methadone just lingers.
and not only that, it
Yeah.
feels. I mean, you know, being dope sick sucks. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about it. But methadone, it's like your bone marrow's on fire. You know what I mean? It's like it's horrible. But let's talk. Let's talk now about the viewers that are watching this that are struggling. What would be the number one thing that you would suggest that they do? What would be the number one thing? I'll ask you first,
Why
Ryan.
me first?
Okay. Okay, I'll ask you. You just 15 months. What you know? You've got all this. You're feeling good. Got good people around you. You're in a great, working for a great guy who's making his own rat farm up there,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable.
Great, it's working.
Yeah.
I got sober on the sit down, shut up and listen.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. He's great. But what would you say to people like that are out there right now that just got high just to feel normal? People say, oh, you got high. Well, no, you get normal, right? You don't get high anymore.
No, yeah, right. Yeah.
So what would you say?
What would I say? Well, it depends on if they wanted to.
Yeah,
hear
let's
me.
say they want. You know how
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
want,
I
you're
would
feeling that guilt. You get high, you're feeling guilt and shame.
I would tell them to take action. I would be, if I could sit down with someone right now that wanted to get better but was really struggling, I would encourage them. I would probably actually even take their hand and help them, make some phone calls, take some action. There's help out there. You've got to put some work in, but if you want it, it will happen. It will. And I would help them, make them phone calls. As a matter of fact, anyone's watching this, if you are struggling, please reach out to me. There is hope, I can help you make those phone calls. I can, with insurance, without insurance, there are places. Sometimes it takes extra work, but it happens.
Absolutely. Great. So what I hear you saying, you have to take action.
Absolutely.
You have to reach out
Yeah.
and say, I need help.
For so long, I would be like, why me? My life's so terrible. But I would never do anything about it. And I would just do the same thing over and over and over. And I knew that I wanted to change. I didn't want to be that way, but I didn't know how to do it.
Well,
I had
denial's,
no idea.
denial's a wonderful place to live, right, Ryan? And when you
Exactly.
think about it, right? So denial's fantastic. I got this, man. I got this, right? Ryan, what do you think? Would you say because you work at Boston Medical Center, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't one of your
Yes,
jobs?
since I work, Gavin Foundation. I feel a very strong affinity to you, Jasmine. I think that you do nail it. You have to take action, and it's hard work. I think that's what people don't realize, that this is very hard work. It's not impossible, because if you attach yourself to people that are doing it, then you're going to be like, yes, I can do it too. But I tell my patients that, people that are diagnosed with cancer, they're looking at 2 years of chemotherapy and being bald and losing their appetite. And I mean, when you're sick, to get well, it takes a lot of work. And recovery takes work. If it's, you don't got it. Nobody's got it. It's a lifetime experience of kind of flowering, learning more about who you are, who you didn't know who you are, becoming a full functioning person. I mean, I'm kind of a spiritual person, so I say a full functioning child of God, that really is worth something and worthy of something. So, it's hard work. Take action.
So what do you think? This brings me to our next question. What is the hardest thing to get to that point of reaching out? Why is it that addicts? Why do we? Why did you? What? Because we all know for a while this sucks. We don't want to live like this, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think are the biggest roadblocks that stop people from us?
For me, I'll speak
For you.
on myself
Okay, perfect.
personally. My pride and ego is just so big that I had to prove that every other way didn't work. And thank goodness that God spared my life, and I made it through situations that a lot of people haven't. There were so many times in my life where I was blessed and put in situations where there was wonderful help available. I didn't take it because I wasn't ready. There are a lot of people in my family that are struggling with active drug addiction, and I want to go in and save them, but I can't. I just have to step back and let them have their own experience and let them be ready when they are. And when they are, I just offer them love and guidance.
So pride and ego. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think
Yeah.
that we all have that, and people
Yeah,
that are.
absolutely. So for me and how my ego manifests itself is like I want to be the best. I personally like want to think that I know everything's right, and I know better than everyone. So if you tell me to do something, I'm actually going to like show you and prove you wrong, and find another way to do it. And I want to be better than you at it. And that's just me. And I know that it manifests very differently in other people. And my pride is I just want everyone to see me as the best. So if you're like telling me I need to go to treatment, and I don't want to do that, because if I go to treatment, I'm thinking like there's something wrong with me. I'm not, and the truth is like going to treatment was the best thing that I ever did. Humble and honestly today to remain humble, and I'm not always humble. I'm not. It takes a lot of work to stay humble, but when I can do that and get myself right size and remain humble, it is literally the most freeing and best feeling that I personally have ever experienced.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What do you think? What do you think? You're smiling there. You like this talk,
Yeah, I
right?
like this girl. I like this girl. It's cumulative events that get you to that point. Because when I was younger and I was the nurse taking care of people, I wanted to be the one that helped you get to that spot. So that was my ego right there. Um, but it's none of that. If you can let go of your ego, then you don't have to worry. So I don't worry now if people get it or don't get it. I care about it. I pray on it. But it's your life. And the more times that we can interact with people, the more times I can interact with people in a dignified, respectful way, I'm just hoping it's just chipping away at their sense of loss or pain, so that
So,
maybe they will take that step.
so what do you think in what you see from down there in Boston, and all the people that you work with? What are some of the roadblocks that 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 are common that people have to overcome, besides pride and ego?
Right. Well, I mean, part of it is better the pain you know than what you don't know. That's why people stay in relationships that are unhealthy. At least I got my husband, even if he hits me on Friday night, that kind of thing. Um, the other roadblocks, and I work very close to Methadone Mile, which is kind of the epicenter of hell in Boston. And you cannot walk from the subway station to the hospital without somebody asking, do you want pins or johnnies, or are you carrying? So, I mean, it's an open air drug market, which makes it really hard, at least in that particular section of town. And as I said earlier, some of the other roadblocks are when you go into a halfway house and you see people that are on medications, and it just kind of triggers you. I think that makes it hard for people to get well.
So,
And then there's a
that,
lot of life issues.
yeah, life issues. So let's talk for a minute about stigma, because that's a big thing, right? Um, it's hard to get. I mean, it's very brave of you to come out here 15 months and tell your story that you went to prison or to jail, or and you were homeless and all that. A lot of people wouldn't want to do that, because they don't want people to know. There's such a stigma out there. I like to say, um, unfortunately, I'm old enough, fortunately or unfortunately, old enough that when I first got straight, I worked in the AIDS epidemic, and that was my job. I did for the state as I was a year, getting clean. I was working as a person at an anonymous testing site, where they'd come in, being a good junkie that could find people's veins. I'd be able to draw their blood, and they'd come back in 2 weeks, and I'd tell them if they were going to live or not, or if they had. So I see a lot of similarities between stigma, where it's a moral issue, man. It's like, hey, guys having sex with guys, if they wanna, that's God. Let them die. So how are we going to overcome that in society? You think?
I don't have the answer to
Right.
that. For me, there used to be a time in my life where I was ashamed of these things, but I did enough work around them where I'm not. I can sit in front of this camera and I will tell my story very freely, and then I will go speak to a bunch of children and I will tell my story very freely, and then I will go to work and I will tell and I'm very comfortable with it, because my story does not define me. That is not who I am. that is a false identity that I was trapped in.
Right.
And I'm free of that.
Brilliant.
And so by me sharing that with people and giving people hope and letting them know, I think that would help. And I strongly encourage anyone else who is in the same situation and is fortunate to have found peace in sobriety to come forward and share that.
Right. So.
And I have a job and I show up every day and I'm trustable and you know what I mean, and I'm in a relationship and I'm a good girlfriend and I show up for my mom and I show up for my brother and I do all these things and so if you met me today, most people wouldn't be like, wow, like she spent a good portion of her life in and out of jail and she's been strung out on heroin and she's done all like these terrible crimes. You wouldn't know that because that's not who I am.
So they don't have to say, Jasmine's here, hide your pocketbook.
No, they don't. They don't. My family might, because they're still not completely healed, but
right.
they're working
Their family
on it.
might.
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
a long time. I had cops in Lowell. One of them became the chief of police down in Leominster, or Fitchburg, I forget, and he said to Richie, it took a couple years for us to believe that you were really, you were really there. But let's talk for a minute about stigma. You must see it all the time down there in Boston.
You know, I kind of have a different take on stigma. I really do. I think it's been sensationalized by the media, by the addiction industry. George Orwell says in his book 1984, freedom is the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. So when I'm seeing someone that is destroying their life, or someone that's, destroying their children or destroying their body, I talk about it. I mean, I don't say you're a junkie. And even, the political correctness stuff, which is separate totally from the opiate crisis, has, made us all terrified to say anything. So now when you see someone staggering around methadone mild, God forbid you would say, get your ass off the street and get into treatment. You'd take them by the arm and you'd take them to the safe site. We don't have a safe site, but we might, a place. I mean, I think that stigma serves a purpose. I think parents they're ashamed, but that's part of the problem for their families is, let's talk about it. Let's talk social isolation. The fact that young people oftentimes are using because they don't have conversations with their parents who, I could go off on it. I just think differently about stigma than, the addict stigmatizes himself, perhaps.
Right. But let's look at this. The AIDS epidemic. And how that came to an end. They credit a lot of that to a docudrama in a book, in the band Played On. And what it did was it shattered the stigma. It showed it put a human face on death, and it showed. It was a complete, trajectory from not only gay men dying or their families. It took the medical community in. It took the administration in, and it just kind of said, hey, they made this film. All of a sudden, Hollywood made Philadelphia, and people started saying, these are just human beings who get caught up. So we have to, I think, somehow, Ryan, we have to get through that. On my Facebook page this week, I try and keep my personal stuff away from my page. I'm a heroin addict. And just lately I've been crossing over for this show to get, because there's people now on my personal page that are struggling, everybody, the husband, the daughter, and I put this thing on about Liz Thompson dying, a friend of mine, and I put a little, it was a little video clip of her and her daughter, her little 2-year-old, 3-year-old daughter, and they would blow in that, when you blow the flower and they go all over. It's beautiful. And this friend of mine put on, I'm glad I never got involved with that drug. So it was drug. He said they're all a bunch of losers. So that's the stigma I'm talking about. They're all a bunch of losers.
That's human nature. It's crabs in a barrel. when the Irish came to Boston, the Brahmins said, I don't want those dirty people working for me. When the Italians came, when the Jews came, when the blacks came, there's crabs in a barrel. People are always trying to get one up, get to the top. So
Right.
it's an element of human nature. It's unacceptable. I mean, this country is about as polarized as I've ever seen it in my nearly 70 years of life on this earth. You got to
I
engage.
thought you were
people.
50. You lied to me. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We have a question that comes in. It's a great question from. I'm going to read it here. It comes in from the viewers. How long did it take for you to commit to get off? This is for you, Jasmine. How long did it take for you to commit to get off methadone to finally being off of it? I guess it means from when you committed to getting off, how long did the process of weaning you down from 40?
I never made the choice to get off methadone. I would have stayed on it forever. I got incarcerated, and I had to
Went
come
to
off
jail.
it. Yeah, and when I came out, I didn't go get put back on methadone. I went right back to heroin. Yeah, I didn't make the choice like, hey, I'm gonna wean down. I'm gonna do this the right way. I was on methadone every day to be on methadone. There was no plan to ever wean down or get better.
Right.
I would lie to people and tell them there was, but there wasn't, and I wasn't interested.
Why?
Why?
Most people.
Why did you want to stay on it?
Because I did there. Why change? I didn't see a reason or a motivation to change. I was living comfortably.
Because it removed you from your conscious reality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
It
from the
removed you-
internal suffering.
Right.
I was okay.
So
in
you
the
were
moment.
high.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So what do you
In the
think?
criminal justice system helps people get off methadone. That's about the only way I think you can get off methadone.
Yeah.
Right.
Is being
Yep.
incarcerated. I don't know
That's how I got
anybody
off.
who's done.
Really?
Well, put your
yeah.
hand out there. You've
Yeah. So,
gotten off
for
methadone.
this, it sounds like, let's take it a little deeper. There may be somebody it sounds like a question of throwing up their hands looking for help here. So if I read that, it's like maybe they have someone that they love that's on methadone and is trapped on it. So in that, what could we say to them that would help them with their worries and their fears? Should they their loved one, if that would be, just continue to stay on it and listen to the methadone? What do you think? What would you advise them?
So if I was asking for a loved one in my situation, I would have to take a step back.
Okay.
And let them make that decision for themselves. If my loved one, hypothetical story here, there's no truth to this at all whatsoever.
Right.
Let's say my younger brother is on methadone and he comes to me and he's like, hey Jazz, like I want to do something different. I would help him obtain that information. I would go there with him and work out a plan with him. But if he had no interest in it and wasn't showing that he wanted to do that, then I would have to take a step back, because trying to impose my will and what I want on someone else is not going to work, and it's only going to cause conflict. And in my experience, it's only going to push people further away from me.
Right.
So,
You think your brother, in this hypothetical, would be able to have the same life on methadone that he would off of methadone?
in my opinion, absolutely not. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from a medical, to answer this question, of someone that's saying, hey, it sounds like I have a loved one on methadone. How long does it take to get off that command? What would you say, Ryan?
Medically speaking, and first of all, I think Jasmine's answer was spot on, but medically speaking, when we would be working in the clinic, you can dump 5 milligrams a day to get down to 60 milligrams, and then you have to slow it down considerably. But you're on 100 milligrams today, you could go to 95 tomorrow, 90 the next day, and you're not going to begin to feel it till you get down to, well, I'd like to say 40, but I'm trying to be generous now, 60. And then you would have to, it would take some time.
What would that time be?
I have had one patient in my whole career that I worked with outpatient who was on a methadone clinic and also on benzos, and she came down. It took her 3 years. 3 years. But she got off the benzos and methadone. I mean, I don't know how she. I was like biting my nails with 3 years.
That's a
But
tough
it's
combination, the two of them. That's not easy. So, if personally, I think that methadone and Suboxone are it's the best business model you could ever imagine. There's no
You're
accounts.
here.
There's no accounts receivable, right? It's all cash.
You got a consumer that'll do anything for it.
You got a consumer that'll do anything for it. It's like
Yeah.
you can't blame those people for saying, "Hey, we can make." There's companies out there that own these tracts of method. You know better than I do, Ryan, all over the country. You know, and they private investors and I wrote this piece for the Huffington Post. And I got a lot of nasty emails and tweets that, and the headlines were "Handcuffed to Addiction," and the editors used a picture of the Suboxone tabs and the molecule structure of methadone as and people didn't like that. That I said, and I didn't mean it because I think for this lady asking the question about methadone, you got to do what you got to do to not chase heroin, right? Wouldn't you say that? What advice would you give someone that's on methadone and really wants to get off?
To follow through and take the action, to start weaning down. You know what I mean? To meet with your counselor, your therapist, the treatment team of wherever you're at. Follow their advice. Follow through. And also, in my experience, and what really worked well for me and still works well for me is to get a support network of people. Yeah, a support network. For me, with like weaning down on drugs, methadone, whatever it may be, there was just like a lot of times of like feeling confused, not knowing what to do, and I would rely on myself to come up with like the answers or how to make it through that. So I think it's really important to like follow the treatment team's suggestions, you know, go with what the doctor says, the therapist says, but also like get yourself set up with some support outside of that, some healthy people that can help you through all of that.
Healthy people. What do you think, Ryan?
I have never found a methadone clinic that would ever encourage people to get off. I wish the doctors and the therapists would.
So did you
but
just
I
say,
don't see that.
excuse me. So did you just say what I think you said? That you haven't found a clinic that would encourage people to get off? Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
Yeah. So I think the key that I was saying, that I think as far as therapy and counseling and healthy, that if someone really wants to get off methadone, and this is the best answer for this woman that asked this question, is that the person, their loved one, should not only just seek counseling at that methadone clinic. They should try and surround themselves with healthy people, talk to people who have been on it and got off.
Gotten off it, exactly.
Right? And get counseling.
I mean, you talk about stigma. The clinics are telling you have a brain disease. You know, you're hopeless.
Right.
Stay on the Suboxone, stay on the methadone, because this is the best it's going to get. Right. Who stigmatized who?
What do you think about the whole brain disease thing?
Well, I'm very opinionated.
Yeah, which is good. That's why I figured I'd ask you.
I'm very opinionated, and I love telling my opinions.
Which is good.
I firmly believe that it's a spiritual disease.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're only going to treat the mental aspect of it is certainly one thing. For me, there are three folds to it. I need to treat all three folds. Every day I have to, and the mental is one of them.
Right.
Absolutely, but if I leave out the spiritual factor and if I leave out the physical factor, you know what I mean? Like eventually I'm going to topple over.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah.
For me, the mental aspect is just one part of it.
What do you think? What do you think, Brian?
I mean, essentially, I feel like it is a disorder of choice in maladaptive learning. I do believe once you're addicted, your brain kind of is running the show, and so it's going to take some time away from the drug or time detoxing to restructure your brain. And the brain is plastic, neuroplasticity. Like when you want to get good abs, you do push-ups or sit-ups. And when you want to get your brain healthy again, you have to do some brain work. And the brain work is not flooding the neurotransmitters with more opiates.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that, and because I'm like right down the middle. Like and I hate saying this because people get upset, but I don't. I think if we keep calling it a disease, then people are never going to be able to get better. They're going to think, and I don't want to take that away from people. If that's what they need to do, that's fine. I do agree that that it's more than it does something to the brain once you're on it. You know, I just think that it rewires it, and it takes a while to get back. But you can get, you know, we used to call it back in my day mocus, mocha, where you didn't. I was just going to swear there. You were just you didn't even know what was going on, right? See, you got me with that Ash Wednesday yesterday. I promised not to swear. So I get it. But one of the things that I really believe in, taken from what you said, is that I believe trauma has a lot to do with this. And from someone that comes with a lot of trauma. And I believe that we can get over the physical stuff, right? But the emotional stuff we're not spending a lot of time with. Now, we can never get there if we're going to be with the MAT. You know, if we can never get there. But I have this thing from my teaching at university and from my books and screenwriting and stuff, that it's a seminar called, and I hate to pitch it now, but it comes up. And it's a seminar where it's called A Life Worth Saving, and where I teach people this quick writing skills, and I teach them this triangle. It's kind of like writing for dummies. And we sit down, we do some editing, we do some free writing, boom. And by the end of the day, we put together these stories, and I've done it in female facilities in Hagerstown, this W House, and with 58 female. The stories that they tell. This is where I met this Liz Thompson that died. The stories that they wrote, and from what I see, a lot of these, the woman from Baltimore, Britt Castleman, that was on our show 2 shows ago, homeless, and lost her kids and everything. That was one of the things that she used. You know, being able to take this stuff up here that's buried in our psyche. It's trauma. You know, like bad. You know, I like to say it like this. I was at the restaurant with Frank Baker last night, the Boston City Councilor, and we were talking about stuff, and they were putting up all these balloons for Valentine's Day, right? And one popped, and I thought for sure I was back in Bosnia, and I thought someone was shooting at me for that moment. It did something to my entire psyche, my entire body went. So I think post-traumatic stress, maybe you can talk about this because of the medical stuff. What do you feel about that, the post-traumatic stress?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, you call it trauma, call it adverse childhood events. I like to tell my patients it's a tear in their fabric. Something happened, you know, and there was a tear that wasn't repaired. And so it kind of haunts you. And that's maybe why seemingly insignificant events like smoking weed, then moving on to whatever it is, the next thing, and before you know it, you're deep in the soup. But you don't know what you don't know, and you're not really prepared to deal with what you don't know until the mucus, as you say, has cleared a little bit. But that's a big, big part of it. And I think writing, and I think mindfulness and meditation and exercise and knitting, any number one of those things can really.
And Reiki. Reiki's a good
Reiki.
one, too. I took Reiki 1 with my wife. That's a pretty cool thing. Unbelievable, the energy. But in the time, I can't believe how fast an hour goes here. And in the time we have left, I'd like to talk about, I see on your tattoo, it says blessed. Is that what it says there?
Oh, yeah.
You know, blessed. And so talk about what do you mean you feel blessed, and in what way? Like if there's a struggling addict out there watching this, you know, what is being sober? What is being blessed giving you? What is it, you know, kind of to
Yeah, absolutely. Blessed. Oh my goodness. I wouldn't even be able to identify with this emotion if I wasn't sober. Gratitude.
Mm.
Gratitude, right? Like my life isn't the greatest. Like I don't have like all these like material things, right? But I have happiness, and I wake up every morning, and I have an apartment, and I have this little puppy dog, and he's so annoying, and like he runs and jumps on us, and you can't get sleep, and all of these things that I never appreciated before, and I never slowed down to see the sun shining and to feel the sun shining and to see the birds flying. And because of all that awareness and the fact that I'm able to be present and in the moment, you talked about energy and I'm really big into energy, and I never had any awareness to that before. And like when you slow down, you're there in the moment, you can just feel everything. And for me, this is like where the spiritual aspect comes in, because I believe that's like the spiritual being,
Right.
right? And to me, that is blessed. I've had all of this my whole life, but I never had the awareness of it,
Mhm.
you know. And I'm 15 months sober, and that's really cool, and that's awesome because a lot of people don't get that. I'm also blessed because like I my last relapse was a suicide attempt, and I took my life, and I was revived, you know, and here I am sober, and I came back with more willingness, and mustered up, and I can't say I because I don't believe that courage comes from me. I've mustered up more courage, and my life has gotten seemingly good. I am
So,
blessed.
so tell me, just because I did the exact same thing, I didn't want to play anymore. You know, I said I'm out of here. You know, so did you um, take put too much in the cooker? What did you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I purposely and intentionally did too much heroin.
You just said I want out.
Yeah,
And back in my day, that was a thing that we got to at one point.
yeah,
So I'm sure that there's people out there that are thinking the same thing.
absolutely.
And so, what would you say to them?
To say to them, just to ask for help, you know, and it comes down to what I had said before. If they have to want it, they have to want it. Like I knew I was suicidal. People in my life knew I wasn't okay, and they tried helping me, and I didn't want it. Didn't want it, you know. What I have to say to them is, I love you. There's help here for you, right?
Right,
Like
right.
I don't even know you, but I love you. If you want to talk, call me. You know, there are
Right.
people out there. There are tons of support groups. Utilize them. I used to think that they were the stupidest things in the world. Now I'm like, hi, like support groups. Like, what do you need? Let me help you.
Brian, in your experience down there, do you see much of that where the addict says, I want out, and puts too much in the cooker and just bangs out?
I don't think they know that that's what they're saying. They do it unconsciously.
Yeah.
I mean, God wasn't ready for either of you lugheads.
Right, right,
Right,
right.
you know, right, and I don't know. Well, I mean, people have come back, and yeah, when they're finally kind of getting on their feet, they say, you know, that was the last time because I just couldn't do it anymore. So guess what? You're still here, so you're doing it, and people do it.
Right.
People do it, and I think Jasmine, I mean, I'm very honored to have been on the show with you tonight. I think that if I was out there struggling, I would want to hear someone like you, because you've been through it. You've been through it. And
I take offense at me. You don't like being all with me. You don't like being all with me. I'm just kidding you. I'm just kidding you. So, you know what? Let's try, because I know that I get a lot of emails after these shows from family members.
Mm.
And you know how hard, you know your family, I know my mom, and I know family members. What kind of advice to in some way, you know, level their stress? What can we tell them to do? Because it's a tough spot to be, right, to have a loved one that's I can't say junkies. Well, I'm a junkie, but let's have a loved one, right? So what would you tell them?
Family needs support. They need support. I would tell them the same thing I would tell the addict. You need support. Get people. Line yourself up with help. Look into it. You know what I mean? Al-Anon. Check out Al-Anon. Go there. There are other family members struggling, going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to family members?
I mean, it is an extraordinarily difficult situation. I'm of the tough love camp, but if it was my child, I don't know what I would do. I do know, in working with people, when I'm working harder than my patient, then I'm out on a limb and they're sawing it off. So in some on some level, the more you do, and you're not getting any kind of bang for your buck, any kind of response, then you need to take a look at that. I'm a big fan of Al-Anon and Ar-Anon also.
The
It's
thing
very
that, yeah, it's you know what I always say. There's a woman, Joanne Peterson. She started this group, Learn to Cope, and I don't know if they're up in New Hampshire. I know they're right on the border in Lowell and Tewksbury and stuff. But she started out her son, this all-American kid, football player, gonna go to college and play football, robbed a gas station with a gun, and it was like, she has. I don't know if there's any like that around. I know she's trying to bring them all over the country, but that's fantastic because you go to, it's like an AA meeting for parents.
Yeah.
That go, which is a fantastic thing. It's not, tough love. My mother said to me at the door, she said, wouldn't let me in the house and my key didn't work anymore. And I won 30 bucks. Back then it was 30 bucks. I was dope sick. It was 30 bucks a bag, a lot, different. And she said, I'll tell you what, if you don't, she came to the little window. If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops. And I remember walking down that street away. That was the last person I had on the planet, my mom. And when I walked away, it was like I don't want to live anymore. I got nothing left. But what I would tell parents that they need support, just like the addict needs support. They need to find themselves healthy people. That's what the biggest thing I could tell you. If you really want something, find healthy people, because we, junkies like me, are just magnets to unhealthy people. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so easy. But I've got about a minute left. So Brian, give me a few seconds here with your best pitch.
best. I mean, parents in particular, I feel for parents. If you start early, you can maybe nip it in the bud. Do you want to have safe children or do you want to have strong children? You want to bring your children up to be strong. If you protect them from everything, then you're kind of at a loss. So get at it, prevention. That's the prevention piece, the early piece. And thank you for letting me be part of this. And
Brienne had a son who played in the NFL. Yeah, so, but
I was a hard ass.
She was hard. Can't tell she was a hot ass. But Jasmine, I want to thank you. I mean, I was to stand in here last minute and to be so powerful and be so strong. It only proves to me, Brienne, that sometimes you're in the right place. Everything that happened, I'm a big believer in this. Yeah. That everything that happens is supposed to happen. It took me a long time to get there, but I want to thank you. Thank you, Brian, and God bless. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect. We'll see you.